The alarm buzzed at exactly 6:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 3 years. Alex rolled out of bed in his downtown apartment, the same routine playing out like clockwork. Coffee first, always black, no sugar. Check the phone for overnight messages from artists and record label executives. Quick shower, designer jeans, leather jacket that cost more than most people made in a month. By 7:45, he was walking down 5th Street toward his recording studio, earbuds already in place, taking calls from Los Angeles, Nashville, and London. The music industry never slept, and neither did Alex. He had built his reputation on being the guy who could turn unknown singers into chart toppers, the producer who could hear a hit song in a rough demo that others would toss in the trash. The same homeless people sat in their usual spots along his route. There was the older woman with the shopping cart full of bottles near the corner store, the veteran with the cardboard sign by the bus stop, and always without fail the man with the guitar outside the subway entrance. Alex had walked past him hundreds of times, maybe thousands. The guy was just part of the scenery now, like the graffiti on the wall behind him or the broken streetlight that flickered but never quite died. Sometimes Alex would see people dropping coins into the guitar case, but he never slowed down enough to look closely. He had places to be, deals to make, careers to launch. His phone would ring every few minutes during that 15-minute walk. Agents calling about studio time, artists complaining about their latest tracks, record executives pushing for faster turnarounds. The music business was brutal, and staying on top meant never stopping, never looking around, never getting distracted by anything that wasn't making money. Alex remembered when he first started in the industry, fresh out of college with big dreams and an even bigger student loan debt. Back then, music felt magical. He would spend hours in his tiny apartment, mixing tracks on cheap equipment, believing that the right song could change someone's life. That passion had made him successful, but success had a way of changing things. Now music was business. Pure and simple. He looked at songs like products, artists like investments, and emotions like marketing tools. The magic was still there somewhere, buried under contracts and profit margins, but it felt distant, like something he'd left behind in another life. The studio building came into view, a converted warehouse that housed 3 recording rooms and the best sound equipment money could buy. Alex had poured everything into this place. His savings, his relationships, his health. The stress of running a successful production company meant constant pressure, constant competition, constant fear that the next project might be the one that failed. Inside the building, his assistant would already be setting up for the day's sessions. 3 different artists were scheduled to record back-to-back sessions that would run until nearly midnight. A pop singer working on her debut album, a rock band trying to capture lightning in a bottle for their follow-up to a surprise hit, a rapper whose last track had gone viral, and now everyone wanted to reproduce that success. Each session meant different demands, different personalities, different problems to solve. The pop singer was a perfectionist who would want to record the same vocal line 50 times until it was exactly right. The rock band fought constantly, their creative differences spilling into every recording session. The rapper was talented but impatient, always pushing to finish tracks faster than they should be finished. Alex had learned to navigate these personalities, to push artists when they needed pushing and to calm them down when emotions ran too high. It was part psychology, part music theory, part business negotiation. Success in his field meant being part artist, part therapist, part accountant. But somewhere along the way, he had stopped hearing the music. Really hearing it. Songs became formulas. Melodies became marketing opportunities. Lyrics became focus group tested emotional triggers. The business had consumed the art, and Alex had let it happen because the money was good and the recognition felt better than the student loan payments he used to stress about. The irony wasn't lost on him. He spent his days surrounded by music, working with incredibly talented people, creating songs that millions of people would hear and love. Yet he felt more disconnected from music than ever before. When was the last time he had listened to a song just for the joy of it? When had he last felt that electric feeling when a perfect melody hit his ears? His personal life had suffered too. Relationships were hard to maintain when work consumed 18 hours of every day. Friends from college had stopped calling when he canceled plans too many times. Family dinners became rushed phone calls between sessions. The success he had worked so hard to achieve had cost him almost everything else. Walking past the same homeless people every day had become a reminder of how easily life could fall apart, but also how removed he was from real human struggle. Their problems seemed so far from his world of recording contracts and tour schedules. He lived in a bubble of industry parties and studio sessions, where the biggest crisis was a delayed album release or an artist's social media controversy. The man with the guitar was always there when Alex arrived at the studio each morning, and still there when he left each night, rain or shine, summer heat or winter cold. Alex had never really looked at him, never wondered about his story or how he had ended up sitting on that particular corner. He was just background noise in the symphony of city life. Sometimes, during particularly stressful days, Alex would notice sounds bleeding through his earbuds. Car horns, construction work, people shouting, but he had trained himself to filter it all out, to focus only on the voice in his ear talking about deals and deadlines and dollar signs. The music industry had taught him that attention was a limited resource, and every minute spent on something that wasn't advancing his career was a minute wasted. Looking around, engaging with strangers, stopping to appreciate moments that didn't directly benefit him, these felt like luxuries he couldn't afford. As he approached the studio entrance each morning, Alex would already be mentally preparing for the day ahead. Which artist needed encouragement? Which song needed a complete overhaul? Which record executive needed to be convinced that a risky creative choice would pay off? His mind was always 3 steps ahead, planning and strategizing and calculating. The homeless man with the guitar was just another fixture in a landscape that Alex had learned to ignore. Another reminder of a world that existed outside his carefully constructed bubble of success and ambition. Tuesday morning started like any other, except Alex's phone died somewhere between his apartment and the coffee shop on 3rd Street. He'd been in the middle of an important call with a record label executive in New York, discussing a contract that could make or break his next quarter, when the screen went black. For a moment, he felt genuine panic. His entire life lived on that phone. Contacts, calendar, emails, music files, banking apps. Without it, he felt naked, disconnected from the network that kept his business running. He dug through his leather messenger bag looking for his portable charger, but realized he'd left it plugged in next to his bed. The silence felt strange. For the first time in months, maybe years, Alex was walking down the street without a voice in his ear. No agent discussing tour dates. No artist complaining about mix levels. No assistant reading through his packed schedule. Just the sounds of the city, raw and unfiltered. At first, it was overwhelming. Car engines rumbling. People talking on their own phones. Construction workers starting their day. The city was louder than he remembered, more chaotic, more alive. He walked faster, trying to get to the studio where he could plug in his phone and reconnect to his digital world. That's when he heard it. A guitar melody, soft but clear, cutting through all the urban noise like it was meant to be heard. The notes seemed to float in the air, delicate but powerful, played with the kind of technical skill that made Alex's producer instincts immediately alert. Someone was playing classical guitar techniques on what sounded like a steel string acoustic, creating a sound that was both familiar and completely unique. Alex slowed down, then stopped completely. In 3 years of walking this route twice a day, he had never actually listened to what was happening around him. The melody was complex, beautiful, and played with a level of expertise that belonged in concert halls, not on street corners. He looked around, trying to locate the source of the music. Other people were walking by, most of them as distracted as Alex usually was, earbuds in or phones pressed to their ears. A few people had slowed down, though, drawn by the same magnetic quality of the music that had caught Alex's attention. Following the sound, Alex traced it to the subway entrance where he had seen the homeless man with the guitar every day for 3 years. But this was the first time he was actually seeing him, really seeing him. The man looked to be in his 50s with graying hair that was clean but unkempt, wearing layers of clothing that had seen better days but were arranged with care. His fingers moved across the guitar strings with the precision of someone who had spent decades perfecting their craft. The guitar itself was old, a classical acoustic with scratches and wear marks that told stories of countless hours of playing. The wood had a warm, honey color that comes with age, and despite its obvious wear, the instrument was clearly well maintained. Someone who knew guitars had been taking care of this one, but it was the music itself that held Alex frozen in place. The melody was original, not a cover of something he recognized, but it had the emotional depth of a song that had been lived in, not just written. The man's eyes were closed as he played, completely absorbed in the music, his whole body swaying slightly with the rhythm. Alex found himself stepping closer, then closer still, until he was standing just a few feet away from the musician. Up close, he could see the calluses on the man's fingertips, evidence of years of serious playing. His technique was flawless, the kind of finger-picking style that took decades to master, combined with chord progressions that showed deep understanding of music theory. The song built slowly, starting with a simple melody and adding layers of complexity. Harmonies appeared and disappeared. The rhythm shifted from gentle to urgent and back again. It was the kind of musical storytelling that Alex had spent his entire career trying to capture in his studio, the ability to convey deep emotion without saying a single word. Other people had stopped to listen now. A woman in a business suit stood nearby, her morning coffee growing cold in her hand. A college student with a backpack full of textbooks sat down on a nearby bench. Even the usual rush of commuters seemed to slow as people unconsciously tuned into the music. When the song ended, there was a moment of perfect silence before the city sounds rushed back in. The businessman dropped a $5 bill into the guitar case. The student applauded softly. Alex stood there, unsure of what to do with the feelings that were rising up in his chest. It had been so long since music had moved him like this. In his studio, he was always listening analytically, breaking down songs into component parts, thinking about market appeal and radio-friendly chorus structures. But this was different. This was music for the sake of music, art for the sake of art, emotion for the sake of emotion. The homeless man opened his eyes and looked directly at Alex. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Alex saw intelligence there, and sadness, but also a kind of peace that he envied. Here was someone who had clearly lost a lot. Alex could see it in his worn clothes and weathered face, but who hadn't lost the thing that mattered most. "That was beautiful," Alex said finally, his voice sounding strange after the long silence. The man smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Thank you. I don't get to play for real listeners very often." Real listeners? People who actually hear the music instead of just walking by. You stopped. You listened. That's the greatest gift you can give a musician. Alex felt something shift inside his chest. When was the last time someone had called him a real listener? In his business, he was known for his ears, his ability to hear hits where others heard noise. But that was technical listening, commercial listening. This man was talking about something deeper. "I'm a music producer," Alex said, not sure why he was sharing this information with a stranger. "I figured you might be in the business. You listen like someone who understands music. Most people hear rhythm and melody. You were hearing the spaces between the notes, the things I didn't play." That observation hit Alex harder than it should have. The spaces between the notes. The silence that gave meaning to the sound. In his rush to fill every second of every song with something marketable, had he forgotten about the power of restraint, of letting music breathe? "How long have you been playing?" Alex asked. 43 years. Started when I was 7. The man's fingers absent-mindedly moved across the guitar strings, not making sound but staying connected to the instrument. "Music saved my life when I was young. Still saving it now, I guess." Alex wanted to ask more questions, but his dead phone buzzed in his pocket as it caught enough charge from his movement to turn on briefly. The real world was calling him back. Messages and missed calls flooded the screen before it died again. "I have to get to work," Alex said reluctantly. "Of course. Thank you for stopping, for listening. It means more than you know." As Alex walked away, the melody stayed with him. He found himself humming it as he climbed the stairs to his studio, still feeling the emotional resonance of those few minutes of genuine music. For the first time in years, he was excited to get to work, not because of the business opportunities waiting for him, but because he wanted to understand what he had just experienced. The homeless man had reminded him of something he had forgotten. Music wasn't just a product to be manufactured and sold. It was a language for expressing things that couldn't be said any other way. And sometimes the most profound conversations happened between strangers on street corners, when one person was brave enough to share their art, and another was present enough to really listen. Alex couldn't concentrate on work that day. The pop singer in the studio kept asking him if everything was okay, because he seemed distracted. During the rock band's session, he found himself suggesting changes that focused more on emotional authenticity than commercial appeal. The rapper noticed too, commenting that Alex was pushing him to dig deeper into his lyrics than usual. By evening, Alex realized he had spent the entire day thinking about the homeless musician and that incredible guitar melody. He had tried to recreate parts of it on the studio piano during breaks, but couldn't capture the soul of what he had heard. It wasn't just the notes. It was the story behind them, the life experience that gave the music its power. When he left the studio that night, Alex took a different route home, one that would take him past the subway entrance again. He told himself he was just curious, but deep down he knew he was hoping to hear more music. The man was still there, playing softly in the evening light. This time, fewer people were around and his music had a different quality, more introspective, more personal. Alex approached slowly, not wanting to interrupt the performance. "You came back," the musician said without looking up from his guitar. "Your music stayed with me all day. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That's the highest compliment a musician can receive." The man finished the song he was playing and looked up at Alex. "I'm James, by the way." "Alex." He pulled a 20 from his wallet and placed it in the guitar case. "That song this morning, did you write it?" "I write all my own material. Been composing for about 30 years now. Not much demand for original acoustic music these days, but it's what I love to do." Alex sat down on the concrete steps nearby, ignoring the strange looks from passing commuters. "Where did you learn to play like that? Your technique is incredible." James smiled, his fingers continuing to move gently across the strings. "Berklee College of Music, actually. Graduated with honors back in 1995. I was going to be the next great guitarist, change the world with my music." "What happened?" The question hung in the air for a moment. James continued playing, a soft melody that sounded like memories being sorted through. "Life happened. I got married right after college to another musician. We were going to conquer the music industry together. I started teaching guitar lessons to pay the bills while writing songs at night. She got a job with a local symphony orchestra. We had plans, dreams, a small apartment filled with instruments and sheet music." Alex found himself leaning forward, drawn into the story. Teaching turned out to be my real calling. I loved working with kids, watching them discover music for the first time. I got a job at Roosevelt Elementary, teaching music classes and running an after-school guitar program. The pay wasn't great, but I was making a difference. Some of those kids had never touched an instrument before. That sounds amazing. It was. For 15 years, it was everything I wanted. Then my wife got sick. Cancer. The bills started piling up even with insurance. I took a second job, then a third job, but it wasn't enough. The stress was crushing both of us. I started making mistakes. At work, missing classes, falling behind on lesson plans. James paused his playing, his hands still on the guitar but motionless. She fought for 3 years. 3 years of treatments and hope and crushing disappointment. I spent everything we had, then everything we could borrow, then everything I could beg or steal. When she died, I had nothing left. No savings, no job, no family who could help. The medical debt was enormous. Alex felt a heaviness settling in his chest. He spent his days worried about record sales and chart positions, while this man had watched his entire life fall apart. "I'm sorry. I can't imagine losing someone like that." The grief was the hardest part. Losing her, losing our dreams, losing the future we had planned together. I couldn't handle being in our apartment surrounded by her things, our instruments, the life we'd built. I gave up the lease, sold everything I could, and tried to start over. "But you kept the guitar." James looked down at the instrument with obvious affection. This was her guitar originally. She bought it when we were in college, spent 3 months' worth of tip money from her waitressing job. After she died, I couldn't bear to sell it. It's the last piece of our life together. Alex understood now why the music had such emotional depth. Every note was connected to love, loss, memory, and survival. I tried to get back into teaching, but the gap in my resume was too big. Principals wanted references from recent employers, background checks I couldn't afford, credentials that had expired. I applied for hundreds of jobs, restaurant work, retail, anything. But without an address or clean clothes for interviews, it's almost impossible. How long have you been on the streets? 4 years now. The first year was the worst. I was angry, bitter, couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. I stopped playing music for months because it hurt too much. Every song reminded me of what I'd lost. What changed? James began playing again, a gentle melody that seemed to contain both sadness and hope. I realized that music was the only thing I had left that couldn't be taken away. No one could repossess my ability to play, or foreclose on my songs, or steal my memories of teaching kids to love music. So I started playing again, first just for myself, then for anyone who would listen. Alex watched James's face as he played, seeing a kind of peace there that seemed impossible given his circumstances. The music keeps me connected to who I am, to the person I was before everything fell apart. When I play, I'm not homeless. I'm not struggling. I'm not defined by my worst moments. I'm just a musician, sharing something beautiful with the world. Don't you get angry? At the system, at the unfairness of it all? Every day. But anger doesn't help anyone, and it doesn't make better music. I've learned that the only thing I can control is this moment, this song, this connection with whoever stops to listen. Alex thought about his own anger, at artists who missed deadlines, at executives who didn't understand his vision, at competitors who copied his sound. His problem seemed insignificant compared to what James had endured. You said music saved your life when you were young. What did you mean? James's playing became softer, more personal. I grew up in foster care, bounced between homes that didn't really want me. Music was the only constant, the only thing that was mine. When everything else felt uncertain, I could pick up a guitar and create something beautiful. It gave me purpose, identity, hope. And now it's saving my life again, just in a different way. Playing on this corner gives me a reason to get up each morning. The people who stop and listen remind me that I still have something to offer the world. The music connects me to something bigger than my circumstances. Alex sat in silence for a moment, processing everything he had heard. Here was a man who had lost everything, his wife, his career, his home, his security, but who still found meaning and beauty in creating music. It was humbling and inspiring and heartbreaking all at once. I have a recording studio a few blocks from here, Alex said suddenly, the words coming out before he had fully formed the thought. That's wonderful. You must love what you do. I used to. Lately it feels more like a business than an art. But listening to you play reminds me why I fell in love with music in the first place. James stopped playing and looked directly at Alex. Music has a way of calling us back to ourselves when we've wandered too far from home. The two men sat together as the evening light faded, one on concrete steps and one on the sidewalk, connected by a shared understanding of music's power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us of our common humanity. Alex spent the next 3 days thinking about James and their conversation. Every morning he made sure to stop and listen for a few minutes. Each time the music was different, sometimes melancholy and reflective, other times hopeful and energizing, but always technically masterful and emotionally honest. On Friday morning, Alex made a decision that surprised even himself. James, I have a crazy idea, he said after listening to a particularly beautiful instrumental piece. I'm listening. Would you be interested in recording some of your songs? I have a studio, professional equipment. No strings attached, no business obligations. Just a chance to capture your music properly. James stopped playing and stared at Alex for a long moment. Are you serious? Completely serious. I've been in this business for over a decade, and I've never heard anything quite like what you do. Your music deserves to be preserved, documented, shared with more people than just the commuters who walk by here. I don't have money to pay for studio time. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for the chance to work with a real artist again, someone who makes music because they have to, not because it's a career strategy. James looked down at his guitar, then back at Alex. When? Tomorrow afternoon? The studio's usually empty on weekends. We could take our time, no pressure, see what happens. I don't know what to say. Say yes. What's the worst that could happen? You spend a few hours in a warm room playing music on better equipment than you've touched in years. James smiled, the first genuinely excited expression Alex had seen from him. Yes, absolutely yes. Saturday afternoon, Alex waited nervously in his studio. He had spent the morning setting up microphones and testing equipment, wanting everything to be perfect. When James arrived, looking clean and carrying his guitar in a worn soft case, Alex felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety that he hadn't experienced since his early days in the business. This is incredible, James said, looking around the studio with obvious appreciation. I haven't been in a professional recording space in 20 years. Make yourself comfortable. Would you like some coffee? Water? We have all day. They started simply. Alex set up a single microphone and asked James to play whatever felt natural. The first song was one Alex had heard on the street, but in the controlled environment of the studio, with proper acoustics and recording equipment, the music took on new dimensions. That was beautiful, Alex said over the intercom from the control room. Want to hear it back? When James heard his own music played through the studio monitors, his reaction was immediate and emotional. Tears started flowing down his cheeks. I forgot, he said quietly. I forgot how my music could sound in a real space with real equipment. On the street, half the sound gets lost in traffic and wind. This is how it's supposed to sound. They recorded for 6 hours straight, taking breaks only when James needed to rest his fingers or when they wanted to discuss arrangements. Alex found himself making suggestions not from a commercial perspective, but from pure musical instinct. How would a slight change in tempo affect the emotional impact? What if they recorded multiple guitar parts and layered them? You know, James said during one of their breaks, you're a different person in here than you are on the street. What do you mean? Out there you seem stressed, always rushing, always thinking about the next thing. In here you're present. You're really listening, not just to the music but to what I'm trying to express. Alex realized James was right. In the studio with him, all the business pressures and commercial considerations had faded away. For the first time in years, Alex was focused purely on making music as good as it could be. Working with you reminds me why I wanted to be a producer in the first place, Alex admitted. It wasn't about hits or money. It was about helping artists express themselves, about capturing something real and meaningful. By evening, they had recorded 8 complete songs. Alex burned a CD for James to take with him, something tangible to prove that this hadn't been a dream. I want to send these to some people, Alex said as they were packing up. Music supervisors, indie label executives, people who appreciate authentic artistry. You don't have to do that. I want to. Your music deserves to be heard by more than just the people walking past the subway. Over the next week, Alex sent James's recordings to everyone he could think of who might appreciate them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A music supervisor for a popular television drama wanted to license 2 songs for upcoming episodes. An indie folk label in Portland was interested in discussing a recording contract. A music blogger with 500,000 followers wrote a passionate review calling James's music the most honest and moving acoustic work I've heard in years. The most surprising response came from Nathan Brooks, a Grammy-winning singer-songwriter who Alex had produced 3 years earlier. Alex, who is this guitarist? His music is extraordinary. I want to collaborate with him on my next album. Can you set up a meeting? Alex called James that evening, finding him at his usual spot outside the subway. James, we need to talk. A lot of people want to work with you. What do you mean? Alex explained about the television licensing deals, the record label interest, the collaboration requests. With each piece of news, James's expression moved from disbelief to wonder to something approaching hope. This is really happening. It's really happening. But James, you should know that this is going to change things. Success in the music industry comes with pressures and complications. Are you ready for that? James was quiet for a long moment, his fingers unconsciously playing scales on his guitar. For 4 years I've been invisible. People walk past me like I don't exist, like my music doesn't matter. The chance to have my songs heard, to collaborate with other musicians, to maybe teach again someday, that's worth any pressure. There's something else. Nathan Brooks wants to meet you. Possibly feature your guitar work on his next album. He's one of the biggest names in folk music right now. Nathan Brooks knows my music? He loves your music. Says it's exactly what he's been looking for to complete his new project. James set down his guitar and looked directly at Alex. None of this would have happened if you hadn't stopped to listen that morning. Why did you do it? Why did you take this chance on me? Alex thought about the question seriously. Because your music reminded me of something I'd lost. Authenticity, passion, the belief that art can matter more than commerce. Helping you get heard isn't just helping you. It's helping me remember who I wanted to be when I first fell in love with music. Thank you, James said simply, for seeing me when I was invisible, for believing in my music when I was starting to doubt it myself, for giving me hope when I thought all my dreams were over. As Alex walked home that night, he realized that helping James had done something unexpected. It had reignited his own passion for music, reminded him that the most powerful songs come from real experiences and genuine emotions. The business side of his career was still important, but it no longer felt like the only thing that mattered. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you stop rushing long enough to really listen. And sometimes taking a chance on someone else's dreams helps you rediscover your own. 8 months later, Alex stood in the wings of the Chicago Theater, watching James perform for an audience of 3,000 people. The transformation had been remarkable, but not in the way anyone expected. James hadn't become a typical commercial success story. His music was too honest, too raw, too real for mainstream radio. Instead, he had found something more valuable, a dedicated audience of people who connected deeply with his authentic artistry. The collaboration with Nathan Brooks had produced an album that critics called a masterpiece of emotional transparency. James's guitar work and Nathan's vocals had created something neither could have achieved alone. The album reached number 15 on the folk charts and stayed there for 6 months. But more importantly, James's story had resonated with people far beyond the music industry. The television episodes featuring his songs had included brief segments about his journey from homelessness to recording artist. Viewers responded powerfully to his message that music could provide hope and purpose even in the darkest circumstances. Tonight's concert was part of a tour of smaller venues, theaters, college auditoriums, intimate clubs where James could connect directly with his audience. He had insisted on keeping the shows small and personal, saying that music was about human connection, not mass entertainment. Alex watched from backstage as James began his final song of the evening, the same melody Alex had first heard outside the subway station. The audience was completely silent, 3,000 people hanging on every note. When the last chord faded, the applause was thunderous and sustained. "Ladies and gentlemen," James said into the microphone as the applause finally died down, "I want to tell you about the person who made this all possible. 8 months ago, I was playing the same song on a street corner, invisible to almost everyone who walked by. But one man stopped, listened, and decided my music mattered. Alex Thompson, would you please come out here?" Alex felt his face flush as the spotlight found him in the wings. The audience was applauding, but he felt uncomfortable with the attention. He had always preferred staying behind the scenes. "I don't need to be up there," Alex said to James later as they packed up equipment. "This is your moment. No, it's our moment. None of this happens without you. You didn't just help me record my music. You helped me believe in myself again." The success had brought practical changes to James's life. He now had a small apartment, basic stability, and enough income from music licensing and performance royalties to live modestly. But the deeper transformation was in his sense of purpose and connection. "I get letters every week," James told Alex as they sat in an all-night diner after the show. "People telling me how my music helped them through difficult times. Veterans dealing with PTSD, people who've lost loved ones, anyone who's faced hard times and wondered if they'd ever find hope again. That must feel incredible." "It does. But it also reminds me that I'm not performing for myself anymore. These songs carry other people's hopes now. That's a responsibility I take seriously." Alex understood the feeling. Working with James had changed his own approach to music production. He had started seeking out artists who had something real to say, even if their music wasn't immediately commercial. His studio had become a place where authenticity was valued over marketability. "I've been thinking about something," James continued. "I want to start a program for homeless musicians. Provide studio time, equipment access, maybe even some basic recording education. There are talented people on the streets who just need someone to believe in their music." That's a beautiful idea. How can I help? I was hoping you'd say that. I need someone who understands both the artistic and business sides of music. Someone who can help these musicians not just record their songs but navigate the industry. Alex had been expecting this conversation. Over the past few months, he had seen firsthand how many talented musicians were struggling not just with homelessness, but with the barriers that prevented them from sharing their art with the world. I'm in. But I have some conditions, James smiled. I'm listening. We do this right. Real support, not just charity. We help people develop their craft, understand the business, build sustainable careers. And we never compromise the music for commercial considerations. Agreed. What else? We start small, maybe 5 or 6 musicians at first. Give them real attention, real resources. Better to help a few people succeed than to spread ourselves too thin. 6 months later, the Second Chance Sessions program was operating out of Alex's studio every weekend. They had worked with 12 musicians so far, helping 3 of them secure small record deals and several others find steady work as session musicians or music teachers. The program had attracted attention from other industry professionals who wanted to volunteer their time and expertise. A booking agent offered to help musicians find performance opportunities. A music lawyer provided free legal advice about contracts and rights. A vocal coach donated weekly lessons, but the most meaningful part of the program, Alex realized, wasn't the business success stories. It was watching people rediscover their sense of worth and purpose through music. Musicians who had felt invisible for years were learning that their art mattered, that their voices deserved to be heard. You know what I've learned through all this? James said one evening as they were closing up the studio after a particularly productive session. What's that? Music was always the bridge. When I was on the street, it connected me to my past, to the person I had been before everything fell apart. When you stopped to listen, it connected us across our different worlds. Now it's connecting homeless musicians to opportunities they never thought possible. Alex nodded, thinking about his own journey over the past year. It's also connected me back to the reason I wanted to work in music originally. I had lost sight of that. We both found our way back to something important. The success of James's music career continued to grow, but in measured, sustainable ways. He had recorded a solo album that was being distributed by the same indie label that first expressed interest in his work. Music supervisors regularly licensed his songs for television and film. He performed regularly but selectively, choosing venues and audiences that aligned with his values. More importantly, he had reconnected with parts of his life he thought were lost forever. A former student had tracked him down after seeing an interview online, leading to emotional reunions with other students and teaching colleagues. While he couldn't return to formal teaching due to the gap in his credentials, he had started offering private guitar lessons and workshops for young musicians. Alex's business had evolved too. He still worked with mainstream artists when projects interested him, but he had begun specializing in authentic, story-driven music. His reputation had shifted from the producer who could make hits to the producer who could help artists find their true voice. The financial success was smaller, but more sustainable. More importantly, Alex woke up excited about his work again, passionate about the music he was helping create. Sometimes I think about that morning when your phone died, James said as they walked past the subway entrance where they had first connected. What if you had found your charger? What if you had kept walking with your earbuds in? Alex considered the question. I probably would have kept walking. I might never have heard your music, never stopped to listen. We both would have missed out on something life-changing. It makes you wonder how many other important connections we miss because we're too distracted to notice what's right in front of us. They stood for a moment at the spot where James used to play every day, watching the current rush of commuters hurrying past with their own distractions and destinations. I still play here sometimes, James said, not because I need to, but because I want to. This corner changed my life. It reminds me that music can happen anywhere, connect anyone, transform everything. Alex thought about all the music happening around them at that very moment, people humming on their way to work, street musicians in other parts of the city, songs playing in coffee shops and cars and headphones. The world was full of music, full of potential connections, full of opportunities to really listen.